missed the fuck out.
Grab my whiskey. I'm trying to get drunk.
We don't care what R. Kelly did.
Did I say anything racist this time? You better get out of here, honky.
And now for something completely different.
Well, two honking just messing around. You'll never know they talk about two honks, Kevin. You might hear something about the NBA. Maybe they'll just make your day on two honks, Kevin. It's sports tonight and family too. Let's all listen to two honks and a Kevin.
What's up, everybody? I don't know why I always laugh when I start these things off. It is July 13th. Richard has a guest this evening, so he is not on the broadcast, but called in my neighbor Andrew, who I just had to spell his name 17 times on the
Still haven't got it right.
Definitely doesn't remember.
trying to start this podcast was a little bit difficult. So pronounce your last name, Andrew.
Hartwyk.
Hartwyk, not Hartwick, as in what Blake kept saying.
Hartwyk.
The Wyke at the end is what's really important. That's what hangs most people up.
Yeah.
Heart is simple, right? Everyone's got a heart, but it's the Wyke at the end that people.
But it's spelled Hart.
Correct. Yeah.
So that just messes. My last name isn't the easiest, so I'm used to having to spell my last name and repronounce it. Do you get sick of that?
I guess I've just grown so used to it.
Right.
I did the heritage.com thing. There's only like 60 or 65 of us in the entire world.
Really?
With the last names that I've been able to find so far. So, there's not a huge volume of that last name out there. And there is a Hartwyk College in New York, where I'm actually from. So
spelled the same way?
It's actually not. So it's spelled Hartwyck.
Oh,
and
man.
So, if you're in the Northeast, New York, New Jersey, and Hartwyk College, that generally throws people off.
Oh, we have listeners all over the world, so I'm sure
somebody has been there.
I'm sure there's some out there that are like, oh yeah, I know what he's talking about.
Hey, I followed today, and I invited a few friends. So you might.
Oh, really? Nice. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. That's how it works.
Canceled.
So just for everyone that is listening, Andrew is a guy I met a few weeks ago. I was out walking my dog. He was out walking his dog. They wanted to sniff each other's heinies. So, it just makes you stop. So we just started, chit chatting, and then, it doesn't take long for me to invite somebody over to the house to watch fights or something. So we kind of been, whatever. I've seen him walk by a couple of times, and we chatted up or whatever. So, but we've had some like small little conversations, and I was like, last week actually, he swung by, and there was we were peeling so many like layers of onions. Yeah, and it's like we never really I felt like there were so many different ways our conversation could go, and that's when I told him, I was like, man, you need to jump on our podcast, and we can just get to know each other even better, or whatever. So so I feel like the best place to start is with what you just said. You did the ancestor test.
Yeah.
So what made you do that?
Well, just because we have a big immediate family. I've got 3 siblings, but then my dad has 5 brothers. My mom has 4 or 5 siblings. A few have passed away. So when we wanted to find all of our cousins and second cousins that might be out there, we really didn't have a good way to do that besides Ancestry and whatnot. And so my sister actually was the one who started it, and I kind of jumped in there and picked up on it a little bit. And on our dad's side, the family tree is a little bit more well established. On our mom's side, not so much. They're Italian immigrants to New York. They did land swaps between an old family butcher shop in the Bronx
Oh, wow.
and farmland in upstate New York. And so
And that was your mom's
my mom's
side of the family?
Yeah,
Okay.
my great grandfather who actually initiated that
Wow.
like land swap in New York. And so the family relocated to upstate New York to what's called Columbia County. It's just outside Albany, New York.
Mhm.
And it's a really small community. There's not a lot of people there, and it's not like New York City, where there's millions of people. It's
Mhm.
a couple hundred people in the hills, and all the family in New York and back in Italy were really kind of lost and disconnected. So it was an interesting way to kind of figure out where all that was from. But yeah, all my family's pretty much on the East Coast. That's where I'm from, born and raised, New York, New Jersey. Super
Okay.
proud.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you always
super
have
proud.
you always have a Mets hat on. So you're a Mets fan, I see.
Die hard.
Really? What made you pick the Mets over the Yankees?
Oh, my dad naturally. So, my wife hates the story, but I was born, July 20th, 1986. The Mets were playing the Astros, went to extra innings, and the Mets lost. I was born around 11:50, 11:56. And my mom tells the story that my dad, he had already had 3 kids. So he was in the lobby watching the game. And then the Mets went on to win the World Series. So, I've just been a Mets I was born and raised a Mets fan, going to games since I was just a little kid.
Really?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I always say about an IU or Purdue fan here.
Yeah.
It's all about who your dad was and who he cheered for.
It's kind of regional too when you're in
Oh
Indiana.
Yeah. Oh
It's
yeah.
definitely regional.
Yeah.
Definitely. Like my dad, he went to the inaugural season for the Mets. He took his youngest brother Chris to the All-Star game at Shea Stadium, way back in the day. And so, that history in my family is something that I've always been super proud of, to be a Mets fan. As painful as that has been, it's been a heck of a lot of fun this year, though, to watch the team kind of really come into their own.
I'm a Reds fan, so I know about painful.
Hey man, I love Great American Ballpark. I actually
it's awesome,
dude. Yeah, every year we go. I just took
Really?
the wife and kids down actually last week for July 4th, and the Mets were in town. It was an absolute blast. Shout out to Joely Rodriguez back in the bullpen there for the Mets. He'll never hear this, but I'm gonna tag him on Instagram.
Yes, you should.
Dude, I'm absolutely going. He hooked my son and my daughter up with their first ever major league ball. He threw my son some gum from the bullpen.
Dude, that's such an impact.
You're probably the only Mets fan there, weren't you?
Oh no, there were hundreds of us, man.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, Cincinnati is such a welcoming city. I love Cincinnati.
Yeah, wow.
It's an absolute blast. And every time the Mets are in town, the last 15 years, there's only been maybe a handful of years I haven't made it to a series down there.
Really?
Yeah.
Man, I feel like baseball is like that sport I just barely follow anymore.
Dude, it's the best family sport though. Like it's the best family sport.
It's fun. It's fun to go.
It's just the tradition. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think it's more of just like sitting on my couch just watching baseball. Like I haven't done that, but I always enjoy it. Like especially I always love the big events. So when the playoffs come, I'll even watch hockey. Like I don't really follow hockey, but anything is a big event. So all right, so you're from New York then, and then do you know how your mom and dad met?
Not really. So they kind of met through friends and family in New York. My mom was in nursing school. My dad was finishing up college and kind of working full time in sales. And they got together back in the early 70s.
Okay.
Had my oldest brother Jimmy pretty quickly, and then my brother John and my sister Lauren all between 74 and 78. And then I came around in 86.
Okay.
So there's a solid 8 year break in between us. So all my siblings are older. Yeah, I'm the youngest. Yeah, nice. I'm the youngest. So yeah.
So how was that, being the youngest with the older siblings?
So it was different, right? My parents divorced around the time that I was 8 years old. So, my siblings got to experience more of my parents being together. I think sometimes they saw maybe the worst of them, but also probably the better parts of their relationship. And so, what was interesting was at 8, my oldest two siblings were already out of the house. My oldest sibling had moved out. He was working full time. My second oldest sibling, John, had actually moved out here to Indiana. He got into Indiana State. He was a Sycamore.
wow.
And so that's how I originally had ties to Indiana and how I grew to know the state.
Okay. And how much older is he than you?
So he's 11 years older than I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then he lives here now still?
No, actually, so he did. He lived here for the last almost 20 years. He had a stint in Japan for a year, but him and his family actually just moved out. Our oldest brother, Jimmy, shout out to him. He's got a restaurant business going, actually 2 restaurants in Lake George, New York, and now a third. They just opened up a pizzeria. My brother John went out to help support that effort.
Oh, nice.
It's a real family affair out there. It's really exciting to watch. Super proud of them.
Do you wish you were a part of that?
Tough question, man, with the cameras on.
Yeah.
No,
was that the line?
Yeah, that was. No, you're good. No, man, it's good. So, of course, it's. I think one of the reasons I moved to Indianapolis was because my brother was here, and
Right.
I lived in Baton Rouge for a while where I had no family. I did that, and that was awesome. It was a fantastic experience, but I really did enjoy having family close, but I've built a beautiful family.
Yeah.
And so, as much as I do miss them, I can't get distracted by the fact that they're not here and miss the
Right.
moments that are happening right in front of me.
Right.
I've got 3 kids at home that take up all of my attention, all my time. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, there are times where I miss it, but we're making life happen here. And that's what I've got to stay
That's what's
focused
up.
on.
Did you have it? I mean, I don't know how deep to get, when it comes to some of this stuff, but would you say you had a good upbringing? I know you said your parents divorced at 8. Was it rough those, after that divorce? Was that tough, especially having your other siblings basically moved out, right? You're kind of left in a way. Were you staying with your mom more or your dad or what?
Yeah, man. So I had a lot of turmoil during that period. I mean, I had a lot of, at 8, 9 years old, I was given a lot of control over my living situation. And so when I would get into a fight with mom, I would go live with dad.
Yeah.
When I would get into a fight with dad, I go live with mom. And then my mom moved to Florida, and my dad was like, "Hey, we're moving back to Jersey." We lived in upstate New York at the time. And he's like, "Hey, we're moving back to Jersey. And, we're going to go live closer to my parents and to your aunts and uncles. And that's going to provide us, more support." He had just started his own business. And so I actually went almost 4 years without seeing my mom, without hearing from my mom. It ended up being a really, difficult situation for me. I won't go too much further on it, but, at the end of the day, when we did reconcile, it created a really difficult dynamic with my dad. And so then I went several years without seeing him. And, that started around my freshman year of high school. And, I tell this story to a lot of people at work and whatnot, because it explains a lot of where I come from. But, I went to 7 high schools in 3 years in 3 different states from that point.
Wow.
And so, New York, New Jersey, and Florida. And, that transition, that continuous, being the new kid, running into a guy on the sidewalk and having a conversation and making friends has become a natural thing in my life.
Oh, yeah. So you didn't have a lot of, I know my brother-in-law, he says that, he had to do the same thing. He was going to a lot of different schools, and then it turned into him having to prove himself to new kids, and it turned into fights. Did that ever happen? Did you go down that path, or have you always just been, "Hey man, what's up? I'm a new kid," and cordial with everyone?
I think I always aimed to be cordial with everyone. I think there were always dynamics where certain situations were challenged.
Yeah.
So, being the new kid, I definitely never sought to establish any sort of dominance. I tried to, go in and really establish myself as, a more tolerant and a more open person. Like I was really open to connecting with anybody. And most of the time that worked out for me. It really did. Now there were times, I got caught up with the wrong crowd, and, part of the reason why I transitioned to so many schools was because of that. I mean, I got into a bit of trouble. I got arrested, 2 times in a 6-month period. And I was given the option, hey, you can face the magnitude of what you've been doing, and you can continue down this path, and you can end up in county prison, or in county jail, or, at 16, you can go and you can enter into this program. And if you're successful with that program, the likelihood is that you're going to change your life. But if you're not, you're going to end up right back here with us. And so, at 16, just after Valentine's Day, I was, taken off to this program. It's the third high school in Florida I went to in 6 months. But it was a program where I lived out in the woods. And so I lived out in the woods for 7 months from that point forward, and lived in a group of 10, 11 other kids, 3 counselors. That we lived in large structured tents built out of pine trees.
Wow.
And provided thick layer, about 3 millimeter thick tarps.
Wow.
And it was actually a program run by Eckerd Youth Family Services. The Eckerd family, Jack Eckerd, huge philanthropist, started at Eckerd College down in Florida. Also started the Eckerd pharmacy chain that was pretty dominant in the Northeast and across the Southeast as well. And so that program was a institution called eHowkey. It's actually closed now, but yeah, man, that program changed my life. I wouldn't be here today without it.
Really? So, one, who were you living with at that time, and whose decision? Did you have no choice? Like, was it literally you had been I don't know if you want to touch on what you did to get arrested, or is that right? You got arrested, you said?
Yeah, twice. Yeah,
twice. I don't know if you want to get into that. That's on you. But was it literally like you have to go to this program or else, or was it like your mom or dad kind of being like, this kid might end up on the wrong path if we don't do something?
Yeah, so it was kind of a do this or else, right? So I'd gone through a teen court program. I won't talk about the specifics of the charges.
Okay.
Just I have a pretty public job, so I don't want to do that. But
it was murder.
Definitely not murder.
Totally kidding.
Attempted murder.
Could you imagine? You're like, I know you don't know me, but
right. Well, I mean,
it
is a funny story though. So like, it has been expunged. I guess I could talk about it because like the first charge that and this is more of the funny charge. I won't talk about the second one, but the first charge I went through the teen court program for, and it was actually assault with a deadly missile. And so in the state of Florida, if you take an unripened orange and you throw that through an apartment window, you're going to get charged with a Class A felony assault with a deadly missile. And so at 16 years old, I faced that charge.
That doesn't count.
Right.
You were just working on your pitches.
Exactly. I was just working on my throwing arm. Like, come on.
Yeah, you're trying to play for the Mets for crying out loud.
Right. I mean, at that point, and this guy, he had almost hit my buddy and I with the car as he was pulling into the parking lot and into his parking spot. And we didn't take too kindly to that. And again, this was part of hanging out with the wrong crowd. He was already on probation in Colorado, and he was down in Florida visiting family. And he was like, hey, man, I'm going to hit this guy with this orange. And he threw it at him. Well, he was walking up the steps and he just missed him. And then I threw another one.
Yeah, then it becomes a competition.
Right, exactly. It's like, well, hey, watch this.
Yeah.
Right. And chuck it through the window. And so, that part sucked. But then I got picked up again after going through the teen court program, after going through the community service and, fantastic police officer actually down in Lake County, Florida, Officer Perry. He was the resource officer at Mount Dora High School where I went to at that time. And, he stepped in and he was a huge role model in my life, but I still didn't listen. And so I was living with my mom, to answer your question. And my stepdad, Mac, he passed away a few years after that. So, I really wasn't listening to them. And they were definitely trying to help me. They were definitely, they put me through like the equivalent to a Scared Straight program. Officer Perry took me up to the county jail and, 3 or 4 months before I got arrested and got taken there for real. And the judge was like, this is twice in 6 months, man. Like, you've already been through this. And my mom had already been talking to the school resource officer, Officer Perry, and then also the guidance counselor about, what are some programs that I could get him into. But then I probably made the worst decision I could have made for myself. I probably could have gotten to where I am a lot faster. After I left that program, my mom was like, hey, you can go to boarding school in North Carolina. Or my dad was like, hey, I just got married and we live in Brooklyn and you can move here and live with us. and go to this Catholic school that my wife went to, and I had never met my stepmom.
Oh wow.
And so I made that decision, and the next 2 years were two of the hardest years of my life.
Why?
Because of the emotional pressure of moving into that situation. So I got more challenged in New York about who I was and about what I had been through.
And you're at what age when you decided to do this?
I was 17.
And and I'm sure part of the hard part was that you're leaving your mom, or were you?
Yeah, I mean, I was leaving my mom, but I was leaving my mom no matter what. It's like she was saying, when I left Ehauke, when I left the woods, I wasn't going back to her. She admitted, hey, I don't have the resources, and I'm not capable of giving you at home what you need. And I don't think that the schools here are going to be enough.
Wow.
And my dad and my stepmom were like, well, my dad was like, hey, we're willing to take you in. My stepmom has never had children. No disrespect to her, but she took in a 17-year-old with
that's
emotional
hard.
baggage of a very, very ugly divorce when I was a kid. And she didn't understand the dynamics of my dad and I's relationship. I think even to this day, she doesn't really understand them fully. I don't think she ever will, but that's okay. Yeah, I've accepted that, and I don't hold her accountable for that. It's not her responsibility.
Right.
So,
I did want to ask you, when you were doing the quote unquote bad acts or kind of going down the wrong path.
Yeah.
Was there a reason? Were you just being rebellious? Was the divorce hard on you? Was going to all the school? Did you, because I would, we all know what's right and wrong. And look, I'm no angel. I've done things that, I've probably lied to my parents. You know what I'm saying? I've done things, right? Hopefully you guys aren't listening.
Probably.
Just kidding. I know yeah, probably. Yeah.
Probably.
You just, and I always tell myself that I lied to my parents. So I know my kids are going to, even if it's little white lies, So I guess that's my question is did you feel like you were spiraling out of control and that you needed to go to this camp, or were you just trying to act out?
No, I needed the camp. I definitely did. I didn't know it at the time. I'm just going to be 100% honest here, right? At the time, definitely. I didn't know. Going back doing a 180.
Too young.
Yeah, I'm too young. I'm too dumb. I'm too horny.
Yeah.
At that point, I was expressing my anger for things that, one, weren't in my control.
Yeah.
And two, weren't my responsibility to take on. And, my stepdad, Mac, had this saying that, again, not until I was older did I really understand what he was trying to tell me. But he used to tell me all the time, he'd be like, man, get the gorilla off your back.
Yeah.
Right. Like, why are you carrying that around? Why have you decided to pick all this up and say this is all your responsibility and you've got to deal with this? And so, it drove me to a really dark place. I mean, I really, even to this day, self-confidence is something that I still struggle with. And so I dealt with really deep and dark, mental issues, mental challenges and mental health struggles. I mean, I tried to take my own life, for the first time when I was 11.
Wow.
I proceeded to try and take my life multiple times throughout my teenage years. And, I was hospitalized between the ages 17 and 19 for the total of about 3.5 months, spread out over that 2-year period. And so that's why I ultimately dropped out of school. I got my GED.
Wow.
But, those mental health struggles that I went through really, were an expression of all this self-hatred that I had taken on myself that I didn't really need to own. Right. And all that was seated in the trauma of the divorce and of the perspective that I went through that divorce and went through my childhood in. Right. It was very, from where I sat, things were not the way that I want my household to be now that I'm a father. And so
it's such an impact. And obviously, if your parents are listening to this, I'm sure they, had all good intentions of working out the marriage.
Oh,
and
yeah, 100%.
And they would never, wish this upon you. And look, I'm married, Kevin's married, we've all married. We know how tough, marriage can be, and, and especially with kids. So, sometimes I always wonder, like, man, what was going on that was so bad to where you have to finally, put the nail in the coffin of like, we are done. We are so miserable,
Yeah.
But unfortunately in the divorce, it does affect kids a lot, and I think that's probably something that's good that's happening now. I feel like is that we are more aware of mental health. So maybe if you do have some kids in the class or whatever, and they are from a divorced family, you can maybe help, help monitor their life. I mean, that's
Oh
a
man,
tough
I got
one.
trauma for that too.
Oh really?
Yeah, man.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was in 4th grade and I went to the 4th Street School up in Glens Falls, New York. I think it's actually closed now. I don't know. But they had this program called Banana Splits.
Uh-huh.
All right. And
you've been through a lot of programs.
Yo, I'm telling you.
So far, I like this one the best because it's making me hungry.
Right.
Banana
Yeah.
splits.
Same. I'm gonna go home and take my Haagen-Dazs out.
I just bought 2 cartons. Not that brand, but
oh man. But so they had this program called Banana Splits, and it was for the divorced kids in class. And
wow.
back in the 90s, man, like 94, 95, divorce wasn't common, right?
Right.
And so, like it was common, but it wasn't common. Like it wasn't talked about. It certainly wasn't something that as a culture we had really grown to accept.
Yeah.
Certainly not the way we have today. Like we're like, oh yeah, 50-60% of people get divorced. Who gives a shit?
It was more hush hush. Like you didn't want people to know.
Well, and we came from a very Catholic family. I was raised Catholic. And so we also had the cultural, religious aspect on the family that we had to deal with. But anyway, they would come into class, man. This is 4th grade, and they'd be like, "Hey, we need the banana splits," and it would be like me, and I would stand up, and I'd be like, "Yeah."
And then everybody's sitting there staring at you and looking at you like.
And then I get back in the class, like, "Yo, what's banana splits? Like, what are you guys doing? Like, are you guys going and eating banana splits?" And it's like, no, man, I'm actually drawing on a chart how angry I am because my parents just got divorced. But yeah, how much more do you want to talk about this? So
that's really tough, man. Like because all that shapes your life, and it becomes. We talk about that a lot on this podcast. How it just becomes part of your journey, right? It's like my journey is completely different than you simply because I didn't have that. I didn't have to move around. I didn't have to go to different states. None of that. And it's just, we all are on this, unique path, I guess. So when you move back, so you moved back. Okay. So you leave your mom at 17, right?
Yep.
Well, hold on, but back to the suicide. What was that? Was that just hatred? Just hatred for yourself?
Yeah, man. It was hatred with myself, man, for the most part. And it was not wanting to deal with the consequences of decisions I was making at that time, right? So
and that's such a young age.
Yeah, 11, such a young age, right, man? So like, all sorts of stuff that I was doing to express myself, right? Like sexually at a young age, 12, 13, 14 years old. I mean, my dad had to get rid of hard drives, because of stuff that I was doing. And then also I was just out in the community, right? I mean, I was out doing stuff that I really shouldn't have done. I was running away. At one point, when I found out the dynamics of, how my mom and I had not been communicating for so long, I grew so angry with my father that, I ran away, and it became like, I ran away to the point where like the state police, the state police, the city police, like they're all looking for me.
Oh, wow, man.
I actually ran away for over 4 weeks, and what ended up happening was
we got lots of stories to get through.
Yeah, man.
I don't know, how old were you?
I was 14, 15.
Okay, well, you just decided to run away.
Yeah, I ran away. My sister. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, did you have any of this before the divorce? Like those first 8 years? I mean, I know it's still fairly young.
No, so I mean, I was angry. There's a story of my mom. My mom tells me, and I remember it pretty vividly, before my parents got divorced, where I got super vocal, and I was like, "Yo, Mom, like you married a child abuser."
Oh, wow.
And like I flat out called it out, and I was standing on the landing in our house up in Queensbury, New York, and I was like, "Yo, you married a child abuser," and I shouted, I screamed it out the house and at my dad and at my mom, and I was super angry about that. But I had never ever tried to kill myself. I remember the first time I ever did hold a knife to myself. I was 9.5 years old, and my mom and I had gotten into a fight, and I was just out of control emotionally.
Yeah.
And I did. I did. I put a knife to my arm and I said, I just want to kill myself.
Oh man.
And I started therapy at 9.5 years old. And so, I spent a large part of the next almost 13 years of my life in therapy every week.
Wow.
And started taking, a considerable amount of antidepressants, antipsychotics, sleeping medications, etc., from pretty much the age of 13 through the age of 18, 19. The last time I was hospitalized, I was hospitalized specifically to get off the medication I was on safely and to stop taking it. And so since 19, I've not taken any prescribed medication for mental health.
Wow.
And my mental health is an every single day thing that I work on, right? And so, the last time that I put a barrel in my mouth and thought about doing it was a decade ago, when I first, had a daughter and had my first kid before I asked my wife to marry me, and I've never shared that since the first place.
Wow.
But yeah, so if I hadn't made that choice I did 10 years ago, I wouldn't have 2 more beautiful children. I wouldn't have the wife that I have. I wouldn't have the career that I've built over the last 10 years.
Yeah, man. For a decision that 11-year-old or a 9-year-old that's trying to make, you know what I'm saying? Like, obviously if you ended it, man, dude, that's deep. There's so many layers there. So I don't know how much you want to touch on it, but it sounds like you were abused.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had physical abuse and mental abuse throughout my childhood, but I witnessed a lot of abuse too. And that's not for me to speak on. Again, that was my perspective, so I'm not observed.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's not to bring shame on my family, right?
Right,
and
exactly.
I think, it's real funny, actually. Like, one of the reasons I've never done a podcast, one of the reasons I've never written a book or written a blog about the things that I've been through in my life is because, even recently when I've shared on, Facebook, hey, it's okay to reach out. It's okay to say you need someone to talk to. Like, if I didn't have people in my life who reached out, I wouldn't be here today.
Yeah.
And, it's funny, the messages you get from family who don't want you to talk about that. The messages you get from, the people who don't want to own that part of the family history. And it's not theirs to own, it's mine to own. And that's, I think, one of the biggest things that I've come to get grips with over the last 2 or 3 years is that, it doesn't matter at the end of the day how they feel about me talking about it, because it's my story to talk about.
Yeah.
And it's up to me to feel comfortable with that. And I do.
Right.
And at the end of the day, I've lost family members to suicide. I've lost close friends to suicide, and I'm tired of being quiet about it. And so that's why when you asked me to talk, I didn't hope that we would get here, but if it got here, I wasn't afraid to talk about it.
Right. But it's just the extra weight that you carry, and like, you feel like you can't express it, but you're carrying that weight, whether it hurts this person's feelings or embarrasses this person. So I totally get that.
For sure. Exactly.
So would you just, is it the desire to, was it just depression? Is that, I mean, I don't know if it was your anxiety or your anger that made you want to.
Yeah, it was deep depression, man. At one point I was diagnosed as bipolar.
Okay.
I was 16 years old when I was diagnosed as bipolar. So it's a really tough age to diagnose bipolar disorder. And as I grew older and as I worked with my therapist and my psychologist, 2 different roles for those that aren't familiar, but as I worked with them and we identified more of what I was dealing with, it was more depression as opposed to it being true bipolar disorder. And so and I read a ton. And one thing that you'll come to learn about me is I read every day. And so even at that stage of my life, all I could do was read about what they were telling me was going on, and understanding that, right? My wife would like me to focus more on my diet, but I focus more on how I talk to myself. Right. And the way I talk to myself from the age of 8 to the age of 19.
I
wouldn't want to be my own friend.
Dude, it's
Right.
so important, man. I literally was beating myself up today over something. And I literally had that thought, like, stop beating yourself up. Like, just
Yeah.
learn from it and move on, But it's like, we all have those little things where it's like, how do I, how am I just now catching on to that or whatever? It's like,
Totally.
so anyways, yeah, that's something I feel like I've always kind of struggled with is being hard on myself, always calling myself stupid. And, and so, yeah, so I can relate
Totally.
with some of that, but
Totally.
I had a lot of friends in high school call me stupid too, so that didn't help.
Am I stupid?
Yeah, I know. They're like my best
Am I?
friends,
I've heard a few of your friends call you stupid since I met you. So.
Yeah, exactly. You came to
They
one
still
UFC.
do it, man. What's going on with that?
Yeah. You came to one UFC party, and you saw the respect I got.
Right.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Well, that's the one of the things, man, that I liked about when we met is that we both homeschool our kids, right?
Yeah.
And so being able to talk about that, and then I got thrown on the bus with you and homeschool my kids, and I'm like, oh, what does that mean?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. That was something we had in common, is that we both homeschool. So, and they're in our neighborhood too. So my wife was mentioning earlier how we, she needs to meet your wife and make it all
Absolutely.
official or whatever. But man, dude, I feel like there were so many layers, so many things I wanted to hit on there.
Sorry to distract you.
No, it's easy. It's I mean,
Squirrel.
it's easy to do. Yeah, squirrel. Yeah. Okay, so I remember you saying you were going back to your dad at 17, and he's got the stepmom.
Yep.
So that's new for
They're
her.
still together. Yep.
Oh, good for them. So
Yep.
that's, I'm sure that's weird for you because you're 17.
Yep.
Dad's new, wife, and you're living with them. You're probably in that stage of like, crap. I'm about to become a full-on adult.
Right.
I've left my mom. She's got a guy, right? And was she good? Was she in a good situation before you left?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, her and my stepdad had their own issues, and I call him my stepdad. I don't even know if they were ever actually married. They lived together for when my mom and dad got divorced. He was part of the reason why they got divorced. But so I knew him from the time I was 8 years old, and so when I first knew him, I had a ton of resentment towards him, which actually led to why I didn't listen to him in my teens. I mean,
man, it all connects, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And so, I didn't live with him when I was, 8, 9, 10 years old. He didn't live with my mom. They still lived separately. My mom had her own place, and we kind of did that single mom route, which that had its own challenges, right?
Oh,
but, when I moved down to Florida and I left Jersey, right, when I ran away from my dad's house, I was on the road for a month. I was living with my sister and her boyfriend, kind of bouncing between college dorms, friends' places and college dorms, and which was cool and also not. I mean, football players smoking blunts, 14, 15 years old. I'm getting a blunt and hanging out, and that's okay. I didn't mind that. I was already smoking at that point, but
at the age of what? 14?
14, 15, yeah. And I'd already drank. I would I would steal drinks out of the refrigerator and drink all the time. So, for me, like, it was okay to be around that scene and, to be up till 2, 3 in the morning, but I wasn't going to school. The police were looking for me. My sister was putting herself at risk. And, even my friends, one of my best friends at that time, Jason Bienemy, we're still friends today. We don't talk as much as I'd like to.
Yeah.
But him and his aunt and uncle, they put themselves at risk. They hid me when I first ran away from the police, who went searching for me and went to their place. They knew that's where I would be, and they knew just how uncomfortable I was being at home. My dad and I were getting into physical altercations at that point, and they were super comfortable with me, crashing with them and protecting me, and then getting me to my sister. And then my mom bought me a plane ticket. The judge said, "Hey, you can get on the plane." At one point, DFS, Department of Family Services in New Jersey, they arranged to meet up for me with my dad at his house in New Jersey. And
man, dude,
I left with the clothes on my back, the CDs in my pocket, and that was it. My mom had to buy me a whole new wardrobe. Everything I had from growing up as a kid, my dad got rid of. And so, when it comes to like artifacts from when I was a kid, like I've got pictures, like he kept the school stuff, right? The school records, the report cards, the pictures, but the shirts, the posters, the trophies, all that stuff is gone. which is cool, whatever. I can't hold on to that. But yeah, when I moved back in with him at 17, I moved in with him and my stepmom. My stepmom didn't understand all that. And I went to a private Catholic school, St. Edmund's Prep off of Avenue U in Brooklyn. Fantastic institution. They're a great school. I had fantastic teachers. I built some great relationships. My stepmom, she has a huge family. So she's got tons of nieces and nephews. I went to school with a few of them.
Oh, cool.
During that time. Yeah, it was all right. It was tough though, right? Because I'm a step cousin. I'm really not anything to them, right? So like I go into that school, but like that was one of the things that I used to be like, hey, like I'm good people because this is my cousin, right? Even though they're a freshman and I'm a junior, like, hey, by the way, like we're good people, and my cousin
helps to know somebody,
right? Exactly. And so, it did help a little bit, but then also, neighborhoods in Brooklyn are tough, right? And if you don't grow up in those neighborhoods and you come into them, you've got to prove yourself to those people, and making friends in some of those areas was tough. And it was also tough too. I mean, the dynamics in Brooklyn, listen, like I love Brooklyn. I love New York. It's near and dear to my heart, but damn, like it's a tough place to grow up.
I bet,
and I would not raise my kids there. That's why I don't.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like it also taught me a lot about myself.
Right.
I got mugged.
Dang, dude.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
You're a ringer.
Like shortly after I moved there, like me and my buddy, we were playing soccer and we wanted to go get fake IDs. And so we went into Manhattan and, we had $400 or $500 on us. And, this guy, he knew what he was doing. He separated us, got me down an alley, pulled a gun, got the money, got my cell phone. The cops called it a drug deal gone bad. I should have never called them. I should have just gone home. It was a complete waste of time.
Yeah.
A petty crime like that to the NYPD, they don't give a shit.
Yeah.
That's really not what they're focused on. And no disrespect to them. It shouldn't be what they're focused on. It was shame on us for being stupid.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a cool experience.
Yeah. Sounds like it. Sounds
so like,
terrifying.
but just living like that just created a ton of mental pressure.
Yeah, man.
Like,
I mean, to say the least, you went through a lot at a young age. I mean, like we always say, everybody's path is so different. And it's different. Like, there was a lot thrown at you, and it's, some of that makes you who you are, which I think that's probably the end of your story, right? It's like you've gotten married, you've had kids, you've created your own family. That is the past. Yeah. Go ahead, Kevin.
You sound like you created a life worth living for yourself. That's what it sounds like to me. Yeah,
100%, man. I love the way you put that. That's exactly it.
Yeah. Right. Do you feel like it's just like it? Because so I got 3 daughters, and the big thing I think about is my last name being stopping, right? I always kind of felt that pressure to keep the Derringer name going, Yeah. So I kind of feel, I don't know if I feel that pressure, but I at least kind of feel that pressure to kind of, we do big parties and we do big gatherings, and it's like I want to kind of keep, that was my grandma and grandpa's big thing, and then my parents would do it and we do, So with all that said, do you feel like you've kind of started your name over in a way?
Yeah, man. So that's generational cycle breaking, man.
There you go. That's what I'm getting at. Much easier.
Yeah.
You're said that way.
Yeah, man. So, like alcoholism is something that runs in my family, drug addiction, etc. And, listen, I'm drinking a vodka and soda tonight, but I don't drink at home. Right. I have a vodka bottle that has literally sat in my pantry for the last 9 months and it's hardly ever been touched. Right. Except for when we have social gatherings. I don't buy beer. I don't keep it at the house. Really, the only time I drink is when I travel for business. I travel about once or twice a month for business. I go out to dinner with my colleagues. I have a vodka and
have it in moderation
and chill. Yeah. But that's one generational, cycle curse that we're trying to break. And then, the other one for my wife and I is having a healthy household. I won't talk about my wife's story. That's her story to tell. And here locally, if you've ever had, if your wife ever has the opportunity to, she should check out Testify. Indy. It's a women's retreat weekend.
Oh, wow.
My wife has been a speaker there the last couple of years, but it's a fantastic getaway, especially for women that are homemakers, but also have full-time jobs
She
and,
would
and
love
are
that.
raising kids, and it's definitely a faith-based thing, and I think she
Okay.
would enjoy
Yeah.
that too. So, but yeah, so my wife's story too is super dynamic, and so at the end of the day, the two of us coming together, we don't have a healthy example of what a
Right.
good marriage looks like. And so for us, and we have some at a distance, but no one that we're close with. And so
Mhm.
for us, like creating a healthy family, for us and what that means, defining that for us has been
Yeah.
really critical for us as a
Yeah.
couple.
Yeah.
And, I will say that my wife has certainly led. I think that's one area where I've kind of fell down as a husband early in our marriage. We've married over 10 years now, but, early in our marriage, I wasn't really the leader.
Right.
In that respect, my wife carried me to the church,
Yeah.
because of the way I was raised in the Catholic Church. My faith and my relationship with the Creator was way, way, way different than what it is today. So, and even today, it's not what I think she would prefer, but it's mine, and that's how we'll keep it. So,
So, so how'd you meet your wife?
yeah, so my wife and I met through, at the time it was one of my best buddies, and one of her best friends that she went to college with. They introduced us when we were both actually dating other people. So I hooked up with her on Facebook and just kind of stayed
Yeah.
close for a couple years, and then she stood me up. St. Patrick's
Nice.
Day, yep, St. Patrick's Day,
Should have wore green, bro.
2010. You know what I'm saying? She says her phone died. But whatever, that's history. The
Yeah.
following year we ended up getting together. At the time I wasn't working full time. I was kind of selling sponsorships for IndyCar teams. I was doing some multi-level marketing stuff,
Uh-huh.
and she and I got pregnant about 4.5 weeks, 5 weeks after we started dating.
Oh, wow.
And so we had a life-changing decision to make very quickly.
Yeah.
It wasn't the first time that I had been in that situation.
Oh, wow.
And so, but it was the first time that I was with someone that I knew I wanted to be with for the rest of my life.
Oh, wow.
And I knew that, I think really the day I met her the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And then it finally came that we were both single, and I hit her up and she was like, yeah, let's get together. We went out to lunch, and the rest is history.
That's awesome, dude.
So
You have how many kids?
we have 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy.
2 girls and a boy. What's
Yep.
their ages again?
10, 8, and 5.
10, 8, and 5. Man, we're right there together, dude. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm 13, almost 11, and 5. So
Okay.
yeah, we were we were sharing stories last night when he swung by about how how little kids can make you lose your mind from time to time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Or keep
Yeah.
you young.
Yeah, that's right. They do
Yeah.
keep you
Definitely
young.
keep you young.
So I know we're bouncing all over the place, but I did want to kind of go back to when you ran away, because I imagine that is, as a parent,
Yeah.
not knowing where your kid is, I can only imagine how terrified she was. What was that thought? I mean, were you just being abused and just so miserable that you're like, anything is better than what I'm in right now?
No, so I mean, I think it stems back to when I was 6, 7 years old, I told my mom she married a child abuser. Listen,
Yeah.
I'm a very vocal person. I stick up for myself. I stick up for those that aren't willing to stick up for themselves.
Right.
And I've done that a lot. I've done a lot of volunteer work. I still believe I'm an advocate. Maybe on the sidelines more now that I have a family and a career going on that keeps me very busy. But time is a construct, and I'm making an excuse. So I'll get back to volunteering as soon as I prioritize it the right way. But really, at the end of the day, I lost my train of thought.
Dude,
That's what happens when I have a drink.
Yeah, I know, right?
A little
No.
before.
We were talking about I was talking about what your thoughts of running away. Like,
Oh yeah. So I mean, so the reason I did it was I was really sticking up for myself, man. So it went back to when I was 6, 7 years old, and I stuck up for myself and really for my mom. But when I realized again the dynamics of, my mom had been trying to contact me. Like I was ultimately pulled out of school by a school counselor to say, "Hey, your mom's on the phone. She says she hasn't talked to you in a few years and she'd like to say hello."
God, dude, could you imagine? Like that's the
I mean,
contact
you
you
got to
get
think
from
at the time too. But you probably didn't have a cell phone back then, right?
No, man, there weren't cell
Yeah,
phones
this
for
is
kids at
the early
that point.
2000s.
You
Yeah,
weren't even buying Nextels for your kids.
right.
I had a few buddies in middle school. I was in middle school at that point. A few buddies in middle school that maybe had a pager.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I had that. I had that for sure. Dude, that's wild though, just to be like, hey, I haven't talked to my son in a while. Like I've been trying to get a hold of him and I can't, if she doesn't have your dad's number
Oh no, she had it.
Yeah.
Oh no,
really?
she had it. Yeah.
You bitter?
Yeah, I mean there were calls that were screened, there were letters sent that were never delivered, all sorts of stuff that went on. But there were also, before I left, my mom's house and went to live with my dad, I mean, during the divorce, during the separation, after the divorce, I mean, my mom's, I don't know if she still has them, but there's a box somewhere full of recordings of every conversation I had with my dad from pretty much the time I was 8 until the time I was 10.
Why?
Because my mom was, I think, paranoid about what was being said in those conversations that she couldn't hear. And so,
she probably didn't. Was the thing where she didn't want your dad to badmouth her, and she just wanted to defend herself?
yeah, I think that.
Was she in
and
the
then,
wrong? Is that why
they
there was
were
a
both
divorce?
in the wrong, man?
Okay.
They were both in the wrong. I think, my mom, I don't know, I don't give
Yeah.
a shit what the actual details were. I know, there were other men, there were other women, there were other shit. There was a lot of abuse.
It was a rough relationship.
Yeah,
So,
there was
right.
a lot of abuse. I mean, listen, like, I'm lucky that I was born.
Yeah.
Right. There was intention for me not to be born.
Right.
Right. My mom didn't want any more kids, and there's a reason there's an 8-year gap. I think that there was a thought at some point that maybe another kid would help the marriage. I think sometimes that's a misconception when you're deep in it, and being in a marriage and having been in some dark places in our marriage, I can tell you, like, that's not a naive thought to think that someone's going to have. They do have it. It's not a good thought to have. Don't go do it. Right. If you're not in a good place with your spouse, don't go pop another kid out. It's not the right thing to do. And so, I think the fact that they made it 8 more years after I was born was a blessing for me, because I got to experience some good times. Right. It wasn't all bad. I have some great memories of my childhood, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I think it also says something about psychology. Like, we generally gravitate towards the darker times first.
Yeah, we do.
And we really have to train ourselves to not do that.
Yeah.
So
it is funny how we'll say, if someone makes fun of your shoes or whatever, like you can get 15 compliments about those shoes, but one compliment, if someone says, dude, those are ugly, would just crush you. You'll
100%.
never want to wear them again.
Right.
Totally.
I got a pair of New Balances like that. I ain't gonna lie, all red, white, and blue. I was trying to be all, pro America. I brought them home, and Nika was like, I don't like those. And I was like, dang it. I was like,
you just crushed every thought I had on the way home.
Dude, they're so clean. I've literally probably worn them 3 times in my life.
Oh,
that's all it takes.
Shoes are so close to your heart. I've worn that already too.
Shoes, yes. I love my shoes.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. So I mean, again, when I ran away, I was sticking up for myself, and at the end of the day, I didn't agree with the way things were going, and I certainly had a string where running away was my solution. I don't run away anymore. I haven't run away in 17 years from a problem I have, right? And back when I was 14, 15, 16 years old, 8, 9, 10 years old, running away was the solution, because that got me away from the chaos, right? That got me away from the shit that wasn't in my control, and it made me feel like I had control, which is, I think, why I mean, it's why I felt comfortable moving as much as I did, and why I still feel comfortable moving. I have no problem picking up and going somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes just that separation, like I just needed. I get I don't know if I get the running away, but I get the walking away, the removing yourself.
Being done from a situation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Like, nothing's going to get better here or whatever.
Yeah.
So I don't know why I keep going back to the relationship you have with your parents, but
No, man, it's all good.
Today, is it good? Do you communicate with them? Do they see the grandkids, or is it just kind of everybody's in their own life right now?
Yeah, man. So we're kind of on an island out here.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I was the first of my siblings to have kids.
Mhm.
So I have the oldest grandkids. I'm the
okay.
youngest with the oldest
Wow.
grandkids.
Okay.
My oldest sibling does not have children. Him and his wife, they're beautiful together. They have their restaurants are their children. They're in their mid 40s. He's in his mid to late 40s. She's more my age. But at the end of the day, they've made that choice together as a couple not to, and that's all good. And there's nothing wrong with that. But then I've got 4 nephews between my brother and my sister, my other brother and my sister. And they all live out east now. So even when they lived here, we maybe saw them once every couple months.
So has it ever been close with your siblings though, or was that age gap always just almost like an uncle type of relationship or something?
I would say more so with my oldest brother. More so feels that way. With my other brother though, I think he's the brother I remember playing football with in the front yard. He would get down on his knees and play tackle football with me. When I was 5, 6 years old. And again, he's 15, 16. He's freshman, sophomore in high school.
He's the cool kid.
No, I mean, not really, but he was he
to
was
you,
wrestling and
he was
playing
the
soccer.
older kid,
Right. To me, he was the only kid that I looked up to, right? So so it was tough, man. Like, that's why when I moved out here, like it was cool to have him out here again, because again, like when I was going through all that shit, with the different high schools in Florida and New York, New Jersey, my brother was in Japan at that time, and I wrote him all the time. And then, I talked to him all the time after I got out of that situation. And then, honestly, like, again, like if he hadn't been in Indianapolis, there were 3 other, I joined a program here called from AmeriCorps. AmeriCorps is a national organization that focuses on U.S. based volunteerism. And it was here or 3 other cities. And the deciding factor was, hey, my brother's here. And they only give you a stipend that's a few $100s a week. So you have to be able to find a living situation where you can either have savings, which I was broke as shit. I didn't have savings. And it was, hey, I've got to have someone to live with. So that was a good option. And so living together, we got close again. And that was awesome. Like we got really close, but then again, I got married and had a kid and moved out, and he got married and had kids, and
you start doing your own lives, and it makes it difficult.
Totally. But we played indoor soccer every Tuesday together for the last 15 years, and that for me was awesome.
That's cool.
My mom and her husband a few years ago, her ex-husband now, but they moved out here to Indianapolis shortly after I had my second, and so they were here for a short time, but now she's moved out east. She lived with my brother here. She doesn't. My mom's kind of a nomad between me and my siblings, but she's actually never stayed at my house for more than a night. My dad and my stepmom have never stayed at my house ever since my wife and I have been together. They've never stayed at my house. And we go out, the expectation is that we go out to visit them. Otherwise it's too difficult to get out here. It's either too long of a drive. They don't like to fly. Which I get. It's hard. It's also expensive. So
are they all close though? Like, are all the other siblings, or is it just kind of like
yeah, they're all pretty close. My brother John and my sister Lauren, they talk almost every day. My dad and my stepmom watch my nephews for my sister and her husband every week. And that's awesome. My grandma, or not my grandma, my mom, my nephew's grandma, she watches them for my brother and his wife that just moved out to New York. Again, she lived with them ever since they had kids. So she's always been there. I mean, the kids almost can't go to bed without saying goodnight to grandma sometimes.
Grandmas are special.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is awesome. Like, you know, I love the fact that they can do that for them.
Yeah,
but
I understand the.
Yeah, and because my wife's family, like, they're not around here really at all.
So you really have no family around.
We really
like,
don't. No,
wow.
we really don't. You know, my wife's adopted family, again, she's got a dynamic story.
Okay.
Her adopted father and all of his extended family lives in southern Indiana, but that's an interesting dynamic in itself. So
we have to have her on.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know if she would, but she's good people. So
yeah, of course, I'm sure she is. Man, dude. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else that you really want to touch on, or I mean, there's so many different. We're about out there.
Ask some good questions. I mean, like I said, I've been pretty open. I don't know if I should have been, but it was all good.
Yeah, we try to wrap it up around that hour mark, so we don't keep everybody too long or whatever. But well, dude, you got some neighbors, man. I know I'm not family, but I got you.
I'll have to meet you next fight night.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. And like I said, I listened to last week's episode. I'm gonna have to, be a weekly listener for you guys. I love what you guys are doing here. It's good stuff.
Yeah, man, it's fun, dude.
It's good for him.
Yeah, we enjoy it. Just sometimes we never know what we're gonna talk about, but
hey, let's wrap it up on a high note. We've been talking about all my shit.
Yeah. Oh, hold on. Try to turn this down. It ain't turning down. Thanks for listening, everyone. I'm screwing up over here, I think.
You are screwing up.
It's all good, man. It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yes, sir.